After much delay, I finally have a few minutes, so let's see how long it takes me to do this. Someone asked me a while ago to do a macro tutorial for Adlib Tracker. I have to caution you, I'm not very good at macros, and quite honestly, the one track that I did that used macros was done incorrectly, but I'll give it the best shot I have. So, first off, I have a couple things I need to explain about macros. When you use effects in Adlib Tracker, let's go to the context section of the menu. Now, let's say you use the 400 command, the 4xy, the vibrato command. That in itself is a preset macro. For every line that you see in Adlib Tracker, there's a preset number of frames. I'm not sure the exact name. I think it's frames that macro will execute per line. So if you go to your song variables, press Control F. Right here you have song tempo, and right underneath it is song speed. Song speed is the variable in question. It's set for 6 right now, which is usually what I use for it. What that means is, for every one line out here, it will run 6 lines of the macros for your effects, or for anything else that you're up to. So, for instance, let's say you were specifically to use the frequency slide up effect. The 100, 1xx. Let's say you gave it a value of 101. Then for every one of those 6 frames, it would slide the frequency up by 1 value. Now, what 1 value constitutes is what I do not know. I wish I knew more about that, but I've never really looked that deeply into it. I just play with things until they sound good. So, that being said, macros work very much the same way. So first off, let me open up my most recent track that should give a pretty good idea of what a macro can sound like. So let me skip ahead a few patterns here. The macro in question you will find on tracks 13 through 18. You will notice tracks 14, 16, and 18 use the vibrato command. Tracks 13, 15, and 17 use the macro. They are part of a composite sound that I made. The intention was to imitate a polymoog. A polymoog has it uses several dissonant waveforms, and they all clash with each other and make a very beautiful sound. So, let's hear just the macros. Now, if you look closely at it while it's running, all the macro is doing is it's changing the modulator volume on tracks 13, 15, and 17, and then playing a certain amount of vibrato. So let's have a look at that macro. Like I said, it is not programmed correctly, but at the very least, it's something that you can use as a point of reference. So Control I to get to your instrument editor. Let me reset my channels real quick. Alt R. Control I. And I believe it was instruments 13 and 14. Let me see. Yes, 13 and 14. Okay. So instrument 13. First off, let's just tab in. You notice the name is PWM Macro. Should give you a pretty good idea what it's doing. So the carry wave is a square wave at the voice's specified frequency with feedback of 5. The modulator is a half sine with an output level of 1A, also at the voice's specified frequency. By changing the output level of this modulator wave between specific values that I've predetermined that sound good, it should create an authentic pulse width modulation sound. But if I used effects to do it, it wouldn't be as precise, and you would hear stepping in it. So let's have a look at that macro. So escape out of this, hit Shift Tab to get into the macro editor. Tab will take you to the instrument parameters editor. Shift Tab will take you to the macro editor. This is our macro editor. So you have values for, up on the left you have the length of the macro, the point where it begins looping, the point where it ends looping, the point where it goes when you hit a key off command, and if you have an arpeggio or vibrato table, then those would be specified here. We'll ignore these for now. All I'm really worried about is this. So tab to get down to the next field. This is the part that confuses most people, but if you look in the bottom, you can see there's some words down below that describe what I'm doing. So, in order, we have the attack rate for the modulator, decay for the modulator, sustain for the modulator, release rate for the modulator, the waveform of the modulator, obviously that would be 0 through 7, that would be your 8 waveforms from the instrument editor. Your output level for the modulator, which is the only thing highlighted here, I'll explain why in a minute. Key scaling level, multiplier, amplitude modulation, all 4 of your flags from the instrument editor, all modulator first. Then you begin the exact same parameters for the carrier. And then all the way to the right, you have, for instance, connection type, feedback, frequency, and a frequency slide. I have not used the frequency slide, so I do not know exactly how it works. But the feedback and the connection type are obviously global settings. So they're over here next to the carrier on the end. They only have one setting in the whole macro. So because macros are so intense on the processor, my machine is a 200 megahertz processor, and those 3 macros running are actually enough to cripple it quite substantially. What you do is, it's the same thing as muting and unmuting tracks in the tracker itself. I'm going to hit Alt-R. That just reset and turned on all the parameters. I now have full access to every parameter on every frame. One more thing I should explain before I go any further. So your song speed is how many lines of a preset macro that the tracker will play per line. The macro def is a multiplier for the song speed variable that goes for macros. So for every 1 macro def here, I'm getting 6. If I was to set this to 5, I would get 30 lines of my macro for every 1 line in Adlib Tracker, I think. I'm not 100% on that. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Anyhow, but that's where you would change that. So back to the instrument editor, Control-I, Shift-Tab, back in the macro editor. So anyhow, let's just say I only want to change the modulator's output level, which is all I want to do. Press Alt-S. It solos that line in the macros. Now I'm only editing this one parameter, even though I have values in all of the others. And you can see how this macro works. It goes down the line and does this, 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 this. And you can see up above, there is a graphic showing how the level is changing over time. It'll do this for any parameter you give it. There's one more parameter that I did not mention, and there's a reason for that. This one over here, the duration. My macro is incorrect. I should have used the duration command and not the output level command. By using the output level command, now I can't change it later without adding or deleting lines, and then I have to change the length and the loop length of the macro. If I had done it correctly and changed the duration, for instance, let's say I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of 1D. The correct way to do this would be to put an 8 here, 8, and then delete the other lines below it. You can use insert and delete to delete, insert and delete lines at will. Insert, delete. That would be correct. It would then play 8 lines at volume 1D, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's say I have 10 lines at 1E. Then I would use a hexadecimal 10, that would be A. And that would give me my 1E. Anyhow, that would be the correct way to do it. Like I said, it's irrelevant now. That's it for this. This is actually very, very simple. And like I said, you get control over every parameter on every frame. Now, the vibrato table and the arpeggio table, to open them up, you would just put in, let's say for the arpeggio table, let's say I put in a value of 02. Why won't my keyboard work? There we go, 2. So now I'm using arpeggio table number 2. The same exact thing applies. Length, speed, loop begin, loop length, and key off. Same thing as before. So let's say I give it a length. Once I give it a length, I'll be able to program it. Let's just say I want F. Tab down to it. Tab and Shift Tab are your best friends in this menu. Lots and lots of tab usage. And then it'll give me a hexadecimal 16 lines to work with. So for the arpeggios, I have not used the arpeggio table, so I'm not really sure how it works. I imagine you should probably not do something like this. And there we go. Yeah, too much. I'm not sure what the maximum value is. I have never actually played with this. And this will probably sound terrible. Length. Let me Shift Tab up to here. Length 04. Why not? Loop length 4, loop begin 1. So if I was to hit a note now, press the spacebar, I can test what I just did. And I don't even hear the change. So whatever I did, it didn't take. What did I do wrong? Let me see. Might help if I set a speed. Sounds pretty trippy, doesn't exactly sound pleasant. Let's try playing a chord with it anyway. Trying to play a major chord, it sounds like a minor chord. Anyhow, spacebar to end preview. Same thing with the vibrato. You would length, speed, delay, loop begin, loop length, key off. The only difference would be the delay. I believe the delay is before it starts playing the vibrato table, but I do not know. Anyhow, if you check the graphic up in the top there, you can see how my vibrato table stacks up. It's more of like a modified sine wave overall, and then it just loops itself over. You can use home and end to travel quickly through the macro editor. Something else I forgot to mention. Anyhow, so let's see how this works when you make a new macro. Let's just say I want to make a macro that sounds like utter garbage. So I have this nice little harp sound here that's not really much of a harp. Let's ruin it. Let's head down here, paste it, Shift Tab. Let's add vibrato and arpeggio and just destroy it. So first off, let's set a length for the macro. Let's say 1F. It's going to be way too long. Loop begin at 1. Loop length, say F. Key off will go to 10. That way the last 16 values will be the key off. Arpeggio table, let's say 05, because I know I didn't use that, and 05 for the vibrato table as well. So, tab down, now I have this. It's completely empty. If I try to play a note, nothing happens. Right now it's forcing on every frame 0 on everything. It is forcing this instrument to sound like nothing. So let's exit preview. Press Control Enter, and we are copying in the instrument parameters for every line. We can hold in Control Enter and just do this the whole way down if we wanted to. You notice, by the way, this is a very, very long script editor here. You can go all the way down to value FF with this. So you have quite a long ways to go with your macros, and I don't think if you have any vintage hardware, I don't think any vintage hardware is going to be able to handle one that long on a significant basis. You'd have to use that pretty sparingly, but that's part of the beauty of this. Anyhow, so now if I go to preview, and the only reason it is looping like that is because I set it to loop. So Shift Tab. Say I left the loop length at 1F. Press spacebar. You notice it's changing the length of that. Anyhow, I'm not sure why it's retriggering. I know there's a value for that somewhere, and quite honestly, I don't know very well how to use macros. Anyhow, so let's have fun with this. Let's give it an arpeggio. Oh, let me do this first. Yeah, it didn't change anything. Okay, let's give it an arpeggio. So, length, 6. Speed, well, let's start it at 0 first, because I want to do a vibrato first. Loop begin at 1, and loop length at 6. Key off, we don't need. 1, 8, 90. Control page down, nope. Control page up and page down will switch between arpeggio and vibrato tables. If you notice up at the top, it's changing the index value of the table. So I can go back to my previous arpeggio table number 2 here. So you can use different tables between macros if you know what you're doing. However, I'm trying to think, I know there's a shift minus, somewhere there's a value. I'll find it. Let me see. Okay, just minus apparently. Nope, I don't see it. Doesn't seem to be working. Well, anyway, you can create a negative value. And you can have it go underneath. I don't know if arpeggio tables allow it. I'll try it again in vibrato tables, but I know it'll let you subtract from that value. Let's see, 60, 20. So let's give this a preview. Oh, I forgot to set a speed value. Let's give us a preview anyway. Speed value 1. Very interesting sound. Not exactly the kind of sound I was hoping for. Not that I was hoping for anything spectacular. Anyhow, let's set the speed to 0 and play with the vibrato table. So your vibrato length, let's just set that for F for now. Speed 1. Loop delay 0, loop begin 1, loop length F. Key off, no need. Tab. Okay, so let's give this a value. There we go. So if you're in this field and you hit minus, it takes you down a line. If you go over here to one of the number fields and hit minus or plus on your number pad, then it changes the value appropriately. So let's make the world's worst vibrato. Let's make it something real stupid. Something that's totally awful and is going to sound terrible and be funny. Let's give this a listen. Okay, so it sounds pretty terrible. That's the point. Now, let's quit preview mode. Let's turn on that arpeggio. Speed 1, preview. I'll be honest with you, that's a pretty funky phone sound effect. But anyway, this points out the best power of the macro editor, in my opinion, is to make sound effects. Just playing with it, you can make a wide variety of sound effects. I've made some really strange other sound effects too. I didn't save any of them, probably should have, but they were for use in showing people stuff, so I didn't bother saving. Anyhow, hopefully this has given you a pretty good idea how macros work. And before I finish this up, let's set this for 5. I'm using the SDL version on a Core i7. So this computer should be able to handle this. So let me go back to 10 and play. What's happening is, since I set the macro def so high, it's playing the macro far too quickly for you to even hear it. So let's just set it for 2, and then if that works, then we'll set it for 3. It's pretty intense there. Let's just set it for something crazy real quick before I'm done. It says the maximum is 11. Let's set it for 11. this goes to 11. Anyway, you get the idea, and with the harp sound, you can even do the instrument preview from out here at the instrument editor. And that sound has now also been destroyed by the change of that value that I did. Anyhow, that's about all I have. If you have any further questions, I can try to answer them, but I can't promise a good answer. But leave me a comment down below with your thoughts, and thanks for watching. Hopefully this has been helpful to you.